Excellent. Well, just one brief important announcement prior to
Yes, sir. Mr. Jones.
Here.
Mr. Clark.
Here.
Ms. Adams.
Here.
Mr. Bessie.
Here.
Mr. Brannon.
Here.
Mr. Rocket. Mr. Rocket.
Apple is here.
Brent Rocket, let's see, I see your video. Can you hear my okay, I see that signal. Thank you. Mr. Combest.
here.
Thank you. Mr. Apple.
Here.
Thank you. Mr. Lane. Mr. Lane. Oh, I think maybe your audio is not working. I can see your image though. Can you try one more time? No, but I can see your lips moving, so we'll count that as Mr. Byram.
I'm here.
Thank you. Mr. Marion.
Here.
Mr. Swaim.
Here.
Mr. Morris.
Here.
Mr. Perkins.
Here.
And Mr. Clark.
Here.
Billy Clark.
Here.
Thank you. Is there anybody that I left off? Great. Thank you very much.
Very good. Members, if there's no objections, we will let Mr. Lane vote by thumbs up or thumbs down. Since
Can
we're
you
having
hear me now?
Now we've got you. Okay. Very good.
All right. Yeah, I had the wrong microphone for some reason. Sorry about that.
Very good. All right, folks, if you happen to notice that Matthew Burzek was doing our secretarial role today, he is the interim TAC secretary. He's standing in for Kelly Garvin. Kelly is out on parental leave. She recently had a healthy baby boy, Liam Garvin. Such a lovely Irish name for such a child. So Kelly, congratulations. We are we're very happy for you, and I know a son who is strong-willed warrior and protector, as Liam stands for in Irish, will give you many challenges over the years to come. But congratulations. We look forward to having you back here when you finish your parental leave. Members, you have had a chance to review the agenda tonight or this afternoon. Let me remind you that we have a conflict of interest statement, that if any of you have any potential conflict of interest with any of the items that we're going to be discussing, if you'll please notify us now so that we can mark you as potentially having a conflict of interest and excuse you from voting on that item. Are there any conflicts of interest? If not, very good. Folks, we'd also like to recognize Tanique McCullough. And Tanique, raise your hand. Come back on the picture there. There you are. Tanique, as many of you know, is retiring. This will be her last meeting. And with your indulgence and permission and hopefully acknowledgement, I'd like to read a resolution for our consideration. Whereas Tanique McCullough has served the city of Winston-Salem and the Winston-Salem urban area MPO since 1998 and has served as director of the Winston-Salem Department of Transportation, specifically since 2012. And whereas Tanique has served the Winston-Salem urban area MPO as chair of the Technical Coordinating Committee, TCC, and staff liaison to the Transportation Advisory Committee, that'd be us, from 2015 to 2023, and has provided professional guidance to the TAC in its efforts to carry out a comprehensive, cooperative, and continuing, that's the three C's together, urban transportation planning process throughout her career with the Winston-Salem Department of Transportation. And whereas Tanique led the MPO through several successful federal certification and triennial reviews, and whereas Tanique fostered and maintained an excellent relationship with all MPO member jurisdictions, as well as MPO partners such as the North Carolina Department of Transportation. Getting along with Mr. Ivey is difficult. The Federal Highway Administration, the Federal Transit Administration, and was a resource to the Winston-Salem urban area, community, and triad. And whereas Tanique led or had a significant role in numerous plans, including several long-range transportation plans for which she served on the steering committee and provided oversight. And whereas Tanique had a significant role in all phases of numerous projects, from the planning and studies to the funding and construction, including a Business 40 project, the Salem Creek Connector project, and the Beltway project, for which she served as liaison between the NCDOT and the MPO and the city of Winston-Salem. Now, I know it's about time. Therefore, let it be resolved that the Transportation Advisory Committee of Winston-Salem Urban Area Metropolitan Planning Organization recognizes and thanks Tanique McCullough for her contributions to the community and 11 years of dedicated service to the residents of Winston-Salem urban area, and wishes her health and happiness in her retirement and her new endeavors. Be it further resolved that this resolution be spread upon the minutes of this committee, and a copy of this resolution be presented to Tanique McCullough. May I have a motion for approval, please?
So moved.
Second.
Very good. Ms. Adams makes the motion. Mayor Joines makes the second. Any discussion? Matthew, will you please call the roll?
Yes, sir. Let's see, Mr. Joines seconded the motion. Mr. Clark, how do you vote?
Yes.
Ms. Adams made the motion. Mr. Bessie,
Yes.
Mr. Brandon,
Yes.
Mr. Rocket,
Yes.
Mr. Combest,
Aye.
Mr. Apple,
Aye.
Mr. Lane,
Yes.
Mr. Byram,
Yes.
Mr. Marion,
Yes.
Mr. Swaim,
Yes.
Mr. Morris,
Yes.
Mr. Perkins,
Yes.
and Mr. Willie Clark.
Yes.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, members. Tanique, I do want to say to you in all sincerity and some of the joking aside, it has been an absolute pleasure working with you. There's not many folks that you have an opportunity to work with in these kind of situations where competence and professionalism are highly regarded, and you've demonstrated that in the highest degree. So we are so pleased that hopefully you will have a great retirement. I understand, though, you're not really going into retirement. You're going to a second career. So we wish you all the best. Members, we will be presenting this resolution to Tanique on Friday, March 31st from 1 to 3 p.m. at a going away reception. And Matthew, what's the location of that?
I believe that is right here at Union Station.
Very good. So those of you members who can join us, we'd certainly appreciate you being there to bid a bon voyage to Tanique.
Thank
We
you.
also recognize Jeff Fansler, and Jeff has been named the new Director of Transportation. I don't know if Jeff is on our call or not. There he is.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I am, and I appreciate that.
Good to see you. You want to take just a moment and tell us a little about yourself?
I'm happy to. Well, I will start by saying publicly another congratulations to Tanique, her guidance, her direction, and her coaching throughout the years for staff. And I look forward to working with you all in much more capacity, the representation that you all give and guide us through these decisions. So I'll be stepping in the new role effective in April and look forward to the challenges that lie ahead. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Jeff. Members, this is the section of our meeting where we do have our public comments. Matthew, is there anybody who is signed up to or present to address the committee?
We did not have anybody signed up, and I do not see anybody that it looks like they would like to comment. So I think we can move ahead.
Very good. Should you wish to submit written comments, the secretary will accept those as they pertain to the items we discuss at this meeting. Very good. Our first action item, members, is the approval of our February 16 minutes.
Move approval.
Second.
Mr. Clark makes the motion. Ms. Adams makes the second. Any further discussion? Call the roll, please, Matthew.
Mr. Joines,
Yes.
Mr. Clark made the motion. Ms. Adams seconded the motion. Mr. Bessie,
Yes.
Mr. Brandon,
Yes.
Mr. Rocket,
Yes.
Mr. Combest,
Aye.
Mr. Apple,
Aye.
Mr. Lane,
Yes.
Mr. Byram,
Yes.
Mr. Marion,
Yes.
Mr. Swaim,
Yes.
Mr. Morris,
Yes.
Mr. Perkins,
Yes.
and Mr. Willie Clark.
Yes.
Thank you.
Matthew, I think we may have dropped Mr. Horn off that list. So if you'll mark me as also approving the minutes.
Thank you, sir.
I'm easily forgettable, so I understand. Very good. Hunter, I believe you have our first item of business, and this will be a public hearing. And if you'll give us a little background, please.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, everyone. The item before you is a public hearing and a consideration of targets for Performance Measure Rule 2 and Performance Measure Rule 3, known as PM2 and PM3, and amending the Metropolitan Transportation Plan. PM2 relates to the state's goals for interstate and national highway system pavement and bridge condition, and PM3 relates to the travel time reliability of the interstate and national highway system, including truck or freight travel time reliability, as well as emissions reductions from CMAQ projects. As with PM1, or the safety targets that we adopt annually and adopted back at the February meeting, and we'll hear about later today, MPOs have a choice also for PM2 between setting their own targets or adopting the state's targets and agreeing to plan and program projects that contribute toward the accomplishment of the state's targets for pavement, bridge, system, freight, and CMAQ performance. Adoption of the resolution will amend our MTP and adopt the 2- and 4-year targets as shown in the table below. And enclosed is also an informational presentation for your reference from the North Carolina Department of Transportation that walks you through the targets and the rationale for each of them. This item was subject to a 30-day review period and no comments were received at that time. Before moving forward to answer any questions you may have, I'd like to open up the public hearing period and have Mayor Horn close it when it is appropriate. Thank you.
Hey, Hunter, let's hold off on opening the public hearing first. Let's entertain any questions for you that members may have.
Sure.
Thank you. Members, we've had an opportunity to review this in our books. Any questions for Hunter?
This is Robert Clark. Hunter, do we see all these targets? Do we typically hit these?
Yes. So I'll walk through a couple of the slides just to kind of demonstrate that. This is a little bit different than the safety targets in the sense that they have been hit more often. So I'll share with you where they were set in 2020, 2019 roughly. We set them around 27%, and the higher number equals better performance here. And we had hit a total of about 36.6% as far as non-interstate national highway system in good condition. Same thing here. If you look at the orange targets, 60 to 62% for 2023 to 2025, we appear to be on target to meet those for pavement in good condition for the interstate.
Okay.
And yeah, as you go through those slides, as far as pavement in poor condition, generally these targets have been met. They're set somewhat conservatively, I guess I would add, just because of the nature of transportation funding, project timelines, and how long those can take. So they're not typically set as aggressively, for example, as compared to the safety targets.
Okay.
But overall on target to meet them, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Hunter? If not, this is a public hearing. Is there anybody wishing to speak, Matthew, online or on the phone?
I don't believe so. I don't see anybody. I'll give a moment just in case there is somebody in one of the phone numbers that's listed there. But I don't believe so.
Very good. We'll close the public hearing then. Members, what's your pleasure?
Move
For
approval.
approval. Second.
Clark.
Okay, I think we have Ms. Adams makes the motion, Mr. Clark makes the second. Any discussion? Matthew, if you call the roll, please.
Yes, sir. Mr. Joins,
Yes.
Mr. Clark seconded the motion. Ms. Adams made the motion. Mr. Bessie,
Yes.
Mr. Brandon,
Yes.
Mr. Rocket,
Yes.
Mr. Combest,
Aye.
Mr. Apple,
Aye.
Mr. Lane,
Yes.
Mr. Horn,
Yes.
Mr. Byram,
Yes.
Mr. Marion,
Yes.
Mr. Swaim,
Yes.
Ms. Finney, I believe you joined the meeting in progress. Is that correct?
Yes, I did. Thank you. And I'm a yes.
Thank you. Mr. Morris,
Yes.
Mr. Perkins,
Yes.
and Mr. Willie Clark.
Yes.
Thank you all.
Very good. Thank you, members. Matt, I believe you have our second item.
Thank you, and good afternoon, Chairman Horan, TAC, and members of City Council. Agenda item 4 is a consideration of an update to the transit performance measures and targets and the transit asset management plan for the Winston-Salem Transit Authority to be incorporated into the Winston-Salem Urban Area Metropolitan Planning Organization 2045 Metropolitan Transportation Plan. MPOs are required to develop and report transit targets as noted in Title 23, Section 134 in the United States Code. Per the final rule on transit asset management, MPOs must coordinate with transit providers to set TAM performance targets and integrate them within their planning documents. WISTA first adopted its TAM plan on October 18, 2018, and it was then updated in January of 2020. Since 2020, the TAM plan has met all requirements involving targets, measures, and prioritizations. WISTA is bringing the TAM plan updates for approval, so it may present its updates as part of the fiscal year 23 triennial review process. Amendments to the MTP require a 30-day comment period, which was held from February 13th through March 15th of 2023. And a public hearing will be held today during the TAC meeting, following my questions that I'm happy to take if there are any.
Very good. Members, we've had a chance to review this in our presentation booklet. So are there any questions for Matt? If not, we will open the public hearing on this. Matthew, do we have anybody online or anybody calling in?
I don't believe so, sir.
All righty. If we have nobody wanting to speak, we'll close the public hearing. Members, what's your pleasure?
Move approval, Mr. Chairman. Second, Mr. Chairman.
Mayor Joins makes the motion. Mr. Perkins, did you make the second?
I did.
Thank you very much. Matthew, if you'll call the roll, please.
Yes, sir. Mr. Joins made the motion. Mr. Clark, how do you vote?
Yes.
Ms. Adams,
Yes.
Mr. Bessie,
Yes.
Mr. Brandon,
Yes.
Mr. Rocket,
Yes.
Mr. Combest,
Aye.
Mr. Apple,
Aye.
Mr. Lane,
Yes.
Mr. Horn,
Yes.
Mr. Byram,
Yes.
Mr. Marion,
Yes.
Mr. Swaim,
Yes.
Ms. Finney,
Yes.
Mr. Morris,
Yes.
Mr. Perkins seconded the motion, and Mr. Willie Clark.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, members. That is unanimous. Hunter, you're up again for our MTIP amendments.
Great. Thank you, Mayor Horn, and good afternoon again, everyone. The item before you is the consideration of the fiscal year 2020 through 2029 Metropolitan Transportation Improvement Program, or MTIP, amendments and modifications for the Winston-Salem Urban Area MPO. The MTIP is a subset of the Metropolitan Transportation Plan and reflects our planning areas projects that are programmed in the STIP, or State Transportation Improvement Program. The attached item N are the January and February 2023 updates to the STIP as presented to the Board of Transportation. And this item was available for public review, and during that time, no comments were received. I'd be happy to take any questions or comments you might have on this.
Thank you, Hunter. Any questions? If not, members, we'll entertain a motion, please.
So moved, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Allen. Second, Mr. Chairman.
Very good. Mayor Joins makes the motion. Mr. Perkins makes the second. Any other discussion? Matthew, if you call the roll, please.
Yes, sir. Mr. Joins made the motion. Mr. Clark, how do you vote?
Yes.
Ms. Adams,
Yes.
Mr. Bessie,
Yes.
Mr. Brannon,
Yes.
Mr. Rocket,
Yes.
Mr. Combest,
Aye.
Mr. Apple,
Aye.
Mr. Lane,
Yes.
Mr. Horn,
Yes.
Mr. Byram,
Yes.
Mr. Marion,
Yes.
Mr. Swaim,
Yes.
Ms. Finney,
Yes.
Mr. Morris,
Yes.
Mr. Perkins seconded the motion, and Mr. Willie Clark.
Yes.
Thank you, members. That's unanimous. All righty, Hunter, you're up again with a presentation for our unified plan of work for the upcoming year.
Thank you, Mayor Horn. The item before you, as Mayor Horn stated, is the consideration of the fiscal year 2023 through 2024 Unified Planning Work Program, or UPWP, for the Winston-Salem Urban Area MPO. All MPOs, known as TMAs, with populations exceeding 200,000 are required to develop an annual UPWP in coordination with the Federal Transit Administration. Each year, the MPO develops and approves a UPWP that contains the transportation and transit planning work activities that will be completed during the fiscal year, along with the estimated amounts of federal funds and local matches used to complete the work. The UPWP and all its components are in the enclosed. After adoption, the final version will be submitted to NCDOT. I'll be happy to take any questions on this item.
Thank you, Hunter. Members, do we have any questions? For those of us and those on the committee who have taken some time to review this program of work, I was mentioning this to staff yesterday during our agenda briefing session that there's a lot going on here. And I asked Tanika, I said, how can you be sure you can get all this stuff done? And her response is, well, we just do. So it is quite an ambitious task list. You do get a chance, take a look at it, because it really represents how hard our staff works on behalf of our MPO. Righty, members, that includes our action items today. However, we do have some information items.
Mr. Chairman?
I guess I have to have a vote, don't I?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
That's being caught up in your own conversation. Again, Matthew, if you'll go ahead and read the roll, please.
Oh, we need a motion and a second first.
Okay.
Move for approval.
All righty. I believe, Mr. Joynes, did you make that motion?
No, I did. I think Mr. Colonel.
Mr. Perkins.
Okay, Mr. Perkins made the motion. Ms. Adams made the second. Matthew.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Joynes, how do you vote?
Yes, please.
Mr. Clark?
Yes.
Ms. Adams seconded the motion. Mr. Bessie?
Yes.
Mr. Brannon?
Yes.
Mr. Rocket?
Yes.
Mr. Combest?
Aye.
Mr. Apple?
Aye.
Mr. Lane?
Yes.
Mr. Horn?
Yes.
Mr. Byram?
Yes.
Mr. Marion?
Yes.
Mr. Swaim?
Yes.
Ms. Finney?
Yes.
Mr. Morris?
Yes.
Mr. Perkins made the motion, and Mr. Willie Clark.
Yes.
Very good. Thank you, members. That is unanimous. Now we have concluded the action items. We have 4 informational items on our agenda for presentation today. These items will come up at our next meeting for us to take action on. Matt, I believe you have the first one. Matt, are you with us?
Yep, I'm here. Sorry.
You have the first one.
Sorry. Item 7 is a review of the Federal Transit Administration Section 5307 grant program fiscal year 2023 funding allocations for the Winston-Salem urban area and amending the fiscal year 2020 to 2029 Metropolitan Transportation Improvement Program for operating and capital assistance. Transit systems located in urbanized areas of more than 200,000 in population are eligible to use FTA Section 5307 funds for operating and capital assistance. For fiscal year 2023, FTA announced an allocation of $6,814,898. There are 3 transit agencies within the MPO that are eligible to receive 5307 funds based upon data reported to the National Transit Database, those 3 being Davidson County Transportation, PART, and WISTA. Activities eligible under JARC, which provide job access for low-income individuals, continue to be an eligible activity with 5307. Based upon policies adopted by the MPO in 2017, funding is distributed in accordance with the percentages developed by FTA as shown in Table 3A. Based upon those recommendations, Davidson County shall receive $244,776, Part shall receive $758,596, and Worcester shall receive $5,756,526, and $55,000 will be used for JARC programming. MPO staff coordinated a joint allocation meeting to confirm future activities for which the funding will be used. Staff is using that information for recommendation to the TAC for final approval and distribution. All three agencies agreed with the funding recommendations provided, and staff will recommend approval of an amendment to the MTIP as well. Happy to take any questions on this.
Very good. Thank you, Matt. Any questions for Matt? All righty. Kind of as a side note, members, in talking about these allocations, but also talking about the program of work, Mr. Bessie, you and I also serve on the PART board. We are hopefully working toward an opportunity for not only PART and WISTA and the city of High Point, Davidson County, to be able to coordinate our transit services, particularly under the 5307 grant program. There's going to be a lot more of this to come. I think everybody is recognizing that we've got to become much more efficient in our public transportation systems, and so I'm looking forward to the work that lay ahead of us. I think it's going to be very exciting and very not only challenging but very exciting, and hopefully we'll accomplish something in the near future. All righty, our next item is number 8, and Matt, you also have that one.
Thank you, Chairman Horn. Item 8 is a review of the Federal Transit Administration Section 5339 Bus and Bus Facilities Grant Program funding allocation for the Winston-Salem urban area for fiscal year 2023 and amending the Metropolitan Transportation Improvement Program, or MTIP. The FTA Section 5339 program is a formula-based grant program to replace, rehabilitate, and purchase buses and bus facilities. The program provides federal resources to eligible direct recipients that operate fixed route bus services or that allocate funding to fixed route operators. Funding is designated to states and designated recipients in urbanized areas of 200,000 or more people. The urban area is eligible to receive $571,757 in fiscal year 2023. WISTA is requesting to use the available funds to purchase 3 Transaid vans to replace aging fleet, and the remaining funds will be used to rehab facilities and for capital maintenance. The public participation period will be held for 30 days between April 13th and May 13th of 2023. The steps to follow include approval by the TAC, programming and amending the MTIP and the 2020 to 2029 STIP, and submission to FTA for final approval. Happy to take any questions on this.
Very good. Any questions for Matt? All righty. Let's see. Matt, you have the next one also.
Thank you, Chairman Horn. Item 9 is a review of the Federal Transit Administration Section 5310 Enhanced Mobility of Seniors and Individuals with Disabilities Grant Program, Section 5307 Job Access and Reverse Commute, and plans to amend the MTIP for fiscal year 2022. The Winston-Salem urban area receives federal transportation funds to assist eligible agencies with meeting the transportation needs of the elderly and disabled under the Section 5310 grant program. In fiscal year 22, the MPO received $530,832 for the Section 5310 apportionment, with an additional $63,446 in COVID relief funds courtesy of the CRISA grant. Additionally, the MPO allocated $55,000 for 5307 JARC purposes, with an additional $115,076 in ARPA funds. These funds are allocated to subrecipients through a competitive process. The MPO received 8 applications for Section 5310 and 3 applications for JARC for a total of $870,500 and $125,000 respectively. An external subcommittee from the City of Greensboro evaluated these applications based upon criteria outlined in the newly updated 5310-5307 Program Management Plan. Applicants were scored out of 100 points and received funding recommendations based upon scoring, requested funding, and the ability to adhere to criteria within the plan. The funding recommendations also include approval of an amendment to the MTIP. MPO staff issued a call for projects according to the schedule on the following page, and dates for contract execution are subject to change. Happy to take any questions on this. My last item.
Very good. Any questions for Matt? All righty. Thank you, Matt. Hunter, you have our last informational item for action next week or next meeting.
Yes, sir, and thank you, Mayor Horn. The item before you here is the review of the fiscal year 2020 through 2029 MTIP amendments and modifications for the Winston-Salem Urban Area MPO. The MTIP is a subset of the Metropolitan Transportation Plan and reflects our planning areas projects that are programmed in the STIP. The attached item N was presented to the Board of Transportation in March, and the item N received this month from NCDOT did not contain projects specific to the Winston-Salem Urban Area MPO. However, per MPO policy, we are also presenting statewide amendments and additions to the STIP for incorporation into our MTIP. And so that's in the enclosed. This item will be subject to a 30-day review that begins tomorrow, and I'd be happy to take any questions on this item at this time.
Any questions for Hunter? All righty, thank you. One last information item, and it's not for action, but I believe if those of you have had a chance to take a look at the presentation that's in our prep books, I found it really interesting, and there was a lot of useful, at least for me, information in there that I wasn't aware of or really hadn't appreciated as much. But Hunter, I'm not sure if you or Brian are going to make this presentation singularly or together, but you're up.
Thank you, sir. I'll give a quick refresher on this item really quickly, and then I'll turn things over to Brian Murphy. So as you stated, the item before you is a review of the presentation on traffic safety data trends and 2023 targets for safety performance measures. As a refresher, last month, the TAC adopted the calendar year 2023 safety targets in accordance with federal regulations. Those targets to reduce fatalities and injuries in half by 2035 were set in agreement with the North Carolina State Strategic Highway Safety Plan. To discuss this further, Mr. Brian Murphy with NCDOT has prepared an informative presentation that walks you through each of the targets set and how our MPO and state have performed relative to those targets in the past, as well as some additional safety resources for your use. Both of us will be available to answer questions after the presentation, but with that, I'll turn things over to Brian. I will stop sharing my screen and I'll allow him to take over. Thank you.
Excellent, and thank you, Hunter. And can someone just confirm that they can see the screen?
Yes.
All right, excellent, thank you. Yeah, I do appreciate the opportunity to come and to talk with you all a little bit about some of the safety data trends at the state level and at the MPO level. I'm going to talk also a little bit about performance measures. I know there might have been some questions about that previously. Quickly kind of talk through some of the safety data resources that are available out there that are publicly available, and then be glad to take any questions or discussions as Hunter mentioned. So I'm going to kind of jump into some data trends now at the statewide level that are important to traffic safety. Before I get too far into that, I do want to mention our Strategic Highway Safety Plan. So this is kind of that visionary document at the state level that basically explains how we want to attack traffic safety in our state for the coming years. And so this is a plan that's refreshed at least every 5 years. And it's a broad plan. It's got a lot of stakeholder input, MPOs, RPOs, municipalities, education, enforcement. There's a lot of different parties that are involved in developing this plan. So it does kind of touch a lot of different areas of safety. And so part of that plan is they always adopt a goal. And the goal that we're currently working under is to reduce all fatalities and serious injuries by half by 2035, moving towards zero by 2050. So that's obviously a very ambitious goal. Do feel like that's the right goal. If you ask anyone what's the goal for fatalities in their family, they're going to say zero. And that's kind of, this goal is really kind of reflecting where we are now and where we want to go. So a couple of metrics to kind of explain maybe some of the numbers that you're about to see, some of the specific safety numbers that we're about to see. The first one being population. So obviously it's no surprise to anyone here that we're a growing state. And so if you look at where we were in 2005 compared to where we are now, we're about 2 million people more than where we were there. And so obviously our boundaries aren't growing. We've got more people in that same space, and that the challenge is to how to move those people safely and efficiently within that same boundary. Another measure that informs some of the safety data are vehicle miles traveled. So this is a good measure of activity on our system. It's not a perfect measure in that it doesn't include non-motorists, so bicycle and pedestrians, but it is a good measure of activity of motor vehicle on our system. And so a couple of things I'll point out here. One is that you'll see the rural VMT is represented in red. It's the red portion of those lines, and that's been pretty flat over the years. You see all the growth is occurring in those blue areas, which represents the urban portion of that VMT. The other thing here you'll notice is during that COVID year, 2020, where things dropped off, that was obviously a pretty significant change there as people were kind of put into lockdown and stay-at-home orders. The other thing you'll notice there in 2021 and 2022 is that that steady climb, so we're about the same vehicle miles traveled that we were kind of pre-COVID at this point. Fatalities. So this is one of the key measures that we look at from a safety perspective on our system, and there's not a lot of good news on this slide, unfortunately. You'll see we've been steadily increasing there since about 2011, and then things really took off during that COVID period, which I think was a surprise to a lot of people because, as we just mentioned, you had fewer vehicles on the road, but we had more fatal crashes, and that's a trend that continued into 2021, and it's still 2022 went down a little bit compared to 2021, but still much higher than previous years. And just to put that into a little bit further perspective, our fatalities the last 3 years have been higher than they were since about the 1970s, early 1970s. So you're really heading in the wrong direction here with our fatality metric. Serious injury crashes is another one that is a very important measure that we look at on our system. And so this graph looks a little wonky just because there was a definition change that the officers use when they report collisions of what a serious injury crash entails. And so, but that was around 2016, but you see kind of a steady increase there since that time. So this is another one that's really heading kind of in that wrong direction. Another metric that we look at closely is pedestrian fatalities and serious injuries. This is an area of growing concern. Really, no matter how you break this data down. So if at the federal level, this is showing up as being a higher percentage of fatalities at the state level, obviously, and then most municipalities are experiencing these same types of trends with increased pedestrian fatalities and serious injuries. So we know there's more of an emphasis in people wanting to use public facilities and roadways and sidewalks and crossing those facilities. And so we don't have a good measure of that activity like we do for vehicle miles traveled. Gives us a good measure of our motor vehicle activity on our system. We don't have a good measure of exposure network-wide for pedestrian activity. Bicycle fatalities and serious injuries. Luckily, these are relatively small amounts as compared to the total fatalities. And these are fairly flat over the years. You do see a good bit more variance just because the numbers are smaller. And we do have some programs that are specifically devoted to bicycle safety as well. Reported crashes, again, this is another one that we look at. I'd say it's not that key. Our main focus is on preventing those fatality and serious injuries, but reported crashes is an important metric as well. And this follows very closely with VMT. If you remember, VMT was rising, hit that COVID year and dropped significantly, and then was kind of creeping back up. And that's exactly what we see with the reported crashes. Other thing I'll point out here is just the sheer magnitude of these numbers. 300,000 reported crashes on public roadways in our state. That's a hard number to kind of wrap your mind around, but that averages out to about 850 or so crashes per day. So a lot of activity in this regard. And if you think about the resources that are involved in responding to these events from a police perspective, often involve fire and EMS as well. A lot of public resources, captured in these types of crashes. And of course, when there is a crash, there's often a queue behind that, and then our traveling public is sitting behind that too. So a lot of impact related to these 300,000 or so events that occur in our system each year. So next, I want to talk about some of those same trends and kind of what they look like in the Winston-Salem area. I'll spend a couple extra seconds here on these slides just to kind of set it up. They're all set up similarly as we go forward. And so the statewide trends will always be in red, and then the Winston-Salem trends will be in blue here. And I'll just, really, this is just to kind of give you an idea of kind of how things in Winston-Salem are trending as compared to the state. And then we'll talk about some of the magnitude of some of these events as well. So as far as vehicle miles traveled, you guys are behaving exactly like we've seen at the state, with kind of that steady increase, and then the drop off during the COVID years, and then the recovery after those. Reported crashes, again, similar trends. So you guys were at about 9,000 or so crashes 10 years ago, and now you're at about 14 to 15,000 per year now. So pretty significant increase there. Of course, did see the drop off during the COVID year, but that's recovered to about what it was before. Fatalities, again, at your MPO level, also seeing an increasing trend over time. So you guys are experiencing, 40 to 50, 40 to 60 or so of these events per year within your MPO boundary. Serious injury crashes, again, we talked about that definition change, which makes the numbers look a little weird, but I'd say you all are trending very similarly to the state in that area, with about 200 or so of these events in your MPO boundary per year. Non-motorized or bike ped fatalities and serious injuries, again, it's definitely an increasing trend from where you were 10 years or so. So you're probably double what you were 10 years ago. You were at about 17 or so in 2012, and then 2021 you were at 34. So definitely an increasing trend with the bike ped fatalities and serious injuries. And again, as I mentioned, that trend holds true state level, national level. So a lot more activity around pedestrian crashes as we move forward. And then just pedestrian crashes in general. So not necessarily by fatal in A, but again, these numbers are fairly flat if we look at the total pedestrian crashes on our system. And then with your MPO area, some increase leveled off there, I guess, in recent years. And these last few trends I'll mention, these are more kind of behavioral type issues, but I did want to point those out just because they are quite significant as far as the magnitude of fatalities and serious injuries that are alcohol involved in this case. So you can see there's about 1,300 or so of these per year at the state level, about 50 or so per year at your MPO level that involve alcohol. Speed involved is another area that we've seen a good bit of increase at the state level. So 800 10 years ago to about 1,200 is where we are now. And I'd say your MPO is tracking similarly. I get you guys are falling off more in recent years than we have at the state level, but still, 40 or so of these events at the MPO level per year. And then unbelted, this is one that's always somewhat hard to explain. You look at this from the statewide perspective, I mean, more than doubled in the last 10 years of the number of fatalities and serious injuries that involved an unbelted occupant. And you certainly see that same type of increase at your MPO level as well. So you guys were 25 of these events 10 years ago and 53 or so most recently. So hard to wrap your mind around exactly, we've got to do a better job messaging, obviously, that seat belts work and they save lives, and make sure that people understand that, because this trend is also quite disturbing. So where do these numbers kind of break down within the Winston-Salem MPO area? This is one way to look at this. This is just kind of a simple chart that shows kind of where crashes are occurring at by municipality. And here, by rural, we just mean outside of an incorporated municipality. So you see those numbers there as well. I'll show you a couple of different ways to look at this in a little bit more engaging, interactive way here in just a second. I do want to kind of switch gears here and talk a little bit about safety performance measures. I know you guys recently adopted your targets, so I won't get too deep into the actual numbers, but I'll go over kind of more of the logic and philosophy of kind of how those are set. And so our safety performance measures, they are required by federal funding legislation, just like we talked earlier about the bridge health targets and measures. These are very similar to that. what we're required to measure and set targets for at the state and MPO level are those 5 areas on the screen there in front of you. So number and rate of fatalities, number and rate of serious injuries, and then the number of non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries. Those targets are set based on 5-year rolling averages. They are set for calendar years, and this is obviously an annual process, as many of you are familiar with. So again, we report these at the state level on August 31st with some of our Highway Safety Improvement Program reporting, and then the MPOs are required to report by the end of February. And how are these targets set? We get that question a lot, and that's really up to each state or MPO. Federal Highways does not prescribe to a state exactly how those targets are set. At the state level, we set that target based on our Strategic Highway Safety Plan goal that we discussed earlier. That's set in that basically states that we're looking to reduce all fatalities and serious injuries by half by 2035, moving towards 0. And so that's essentially how we set that goal. So we know where we were in our latest Strategic Highway Safety Plan cycle, and then we know where we want to be, which is half of that in 2035. And so if we're making steady progress, we want to kind of be along that blue line. And so do a little math, and that will allow us to kind of project out where we need to be each year if we're making steady progress towards those targets. And of course, we can measure that against how our actual performance was as we move forward. We do get assessed on these targets. So FHWA does assess the state annually. They do not assess the MPOs directly, but obviously if we're going to make progress toward these targets, then it's important that we're kind of all working together towards these reductions. And so based on FHWA's latest review, North Carolina has not met or made significant progress toward achieving those safety performance targets. And so we're obviously selecting very aggressive goals at the state level. Again, we feel like that's the right thing to do. It's going to make it very difficult for us to hit those targets, but that we do, again, feel like that is the right approach for target setting. So again, MPOs are not assessed, but if you were, this is what that would look like. So Winston-Salem MPO did not meet its targets in any areas and was not better than baseline in any of those target areas either. The actual safety performance measures, I'll kind of go through these really quickly. I know you guys just adopted these targets, so I won't spend a whole lot of time rehashing that. I will just kind of suffice it to say that there's a lot more information about target setting and your actual targets by MPO boundary on our website. I'll provide some of those links here toward the end, but it's a lot of information out there. If you have questions specific about those target setting activities, I'd be more than happy to take those at any time. I do want to switch gears here just a little bit here as we close out and talk about some of the resources that are available to the public to kind of look into a little bit more detail about traffic safety. So one of the initiatives that we just undertook was to make this data a lot more public and a lot more visible. So we do have a new public-facing website that's got a lot of information out there, and we've got some specific kind of tabs here that are geared toward interacting more with public agencies on traffic safety items. The first item I wanted to mention here was our fatal and serious injury crashes, and so we do have all of those mapped. First thing you'll notice is there's way too many dots on this map. These all represent a fatal or serious injury crash, and with each of these, you can kind of zoom in and see, what's going on in a specific area. So these are good reference if you've got a location that you're concerned about or a potential project location and you just kind of want to see what's going on. This is a good reference for that. And so you can zoom in and click on any of these crashes and see more information about time and date, where it occurred, what type of crash it was, and what type of contributing circumstances may have been involved. So this one, for example, involved a heavy truck as part of that collision. So a lot of information here. Again, I encourage you to think about maybe some ways that can be used to help make decisions in your particular area as well. One of the other items I wanted to show briefly is a dashboard related specifically to pedestrian and bicycle crash data. And I apologize as that refreshes, but hopefully that'll come online here in just a second, and we'll see Again, a lot of information here related to pedestrian and bicycle data. This is showing kind of a statewide perspective, but you can go in and select your MPO boundary and see information specific to your MPO boundary. You could also select by county or a specific municipality. And when you zoom in, you notice that all the charts and graphs around the outside of the table here change to reflect what's specifically going on within the boundary that you've selected. And so you'll see those trend lines, exactly what I just showed there earlier. Again, these are specific to pedestrian and bicycle crash data, but it also kind of gives you some high-level information about, what's going on at that level. If you want more information about a specific crash, you can zoom in, click on them, and see similar information like we showed earlier with the fatal and injury crash data. So, hope these are helpful as local agencies are making decisions and trying to understand safety data trends a little bit better. Lastly, I wanted to kind of close out just by showing that all of our projects that are funded with safety money are also plotted and available online. And so everything that we've completed since 2019 is here. Everything that's been funded but under construction or under design is also noted. And then also those projects that have been submitted but have yet to be selected for funding. Those are good projects sometimes for MPOs. We actually partner with MPOs a lot of times to pool funds in order to be able to fund some of those projects that we may have a more difficult time funding with, specifically with safety money, which is a very competitive process. So hopefully that gives you some sense there of some of the resources that might be available to the public related to traffic safety. They'll all be contained in the information. I guess you guys have already seen this information actually as part of your agenda packet. So that information's there for you to access as well. So I've talked a lot. I think at this point, I'll be very happy to take any questions or any comments that you may have.
Thank you, Brian. Any questions for Brian?
Yeah, this is Robert Clark. Can I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
I'm looking at, and you don't need to pull this back up, but just your one of your first charts is just the number of fatalities in the state. And it went down nicely from 07 to about 2011. Then it gradually went up, and then the last couple of years, it's just exploded almost. I also took out of the book the unbelted fatalities and serious injuries, which has gone up dramatically too. Any thoughts on why we're doing so bad?
Yeah,
I mean, this was terrible. You would think, cars are much safer than they were 20 years ago. We got seat belts, we got crash zones, we got my wife's car talks to you when you get out of the lane, and all that type stuff. But it doesn't seem to do any good.
The human element. That's the reason. Brian, thank you. And Mr. Chair, I'd like to say that this is very good information. The one thing that I know the public in Winston, because it's always in the news, television, whatever, social media, is the crime in our community. They can tell you, anybody, just about where we are with homicides and shootings, but they can't tell you about the fatalities and driving or anything vehicular or bicycles or whatever. I wish there was some way the amount of money that the state and the feds pour into trying to help us to be safer was on these platforms as well, particularly television. If the media was involved with helping people to see a visual or something of where we are so far as crashes, fatalities, alcohol, pedestrian type incidents or accidents, I think it's the education piece and the notification, just like we get the silver alerts and whatever, and the amber alerts. We've got to figure out how we let people know about this, because if they don't know, they don't know. But it's also the thing about the human element now is different, regardless of what car manufacturers do to improve the safety. It's the human element side that they're going to drive 100, they're going to be unbelted, they're going to drink. But I believe if we just let them know, people can tell you about an amber and a silver alert as well, anybody.
Yeah, excellent comments. I think you're exactly right. I think for some reason traffic fatalities are accepted and people are just kind of numb to it. So excellent points. The behavior issue, yeah, absolutely. So obviously during COVID, we saw that play out not just in fatality numbers, but in all areas of life, right? We saw, just a lot of kind of behaviors that were different than what they were pre-COVID for whatever reason that is. And so there's a lot of theories of kind of why these numbers have risen, even though the opportunity for collisions, the actual number of people on our roadways decreased during COVID. A lot of those theories kind of tend to lean towards, well, the aggressive drivers were still out there and that there were fewer people on the road to kind of interact with them. And so they were able to be more aggressive, and you see kind of the results of some of that. There's other theories out there too, but yeah, I think you're hitting on a lot of it, is that behavioral aspect. One of the things we've been talking to MPO staff about is comprehensive safety action plans at the local level. So maybe for your city, maybe for your MPO, and part of that is to get at kind of this safety culture, making people aware of exactly what you said, Ms. Adams, about what's going on in our communities and about the loss of life and even the serious injuries associated with traffic fatalities, to try to bring that awareness, because safety is a complicated thing. I mean, there's an infrastructure component to it. We want to make sure our roads are as safe as possible. There's a big people component, as you mentioned as well. It's a big behavioral part of it. And this whole kind of safety culture kind of needs to kind of work together in order to really reduce those numbers. So yeah, appreciate the excellent comments.
Thank you. Members, anything else? Brian, just a couple quick things. Number one, for those members who receive our regular ABC reports about alcohol sales, what we've noticed in Louisville, certainly since COVID, is that there has been a substantial increase in alcohol sales. I don't know how that correlates with the rest of the state, but it seems that it's possible that the increases that we're seeing in traffic fatalities and accidents might correlate with the increased sales in alcohol. It may or may not, but it seems like it's more than just a coincidence. The other thing, Brian, if you would, and Matthew, I don't know, do we have this page in a digital format so that members can grab those links and share them with their councils and their boards?
Yes, sir. Yeah, we have the digital version of the packet, and we can make sure we get the links to you.
That'd be great.
The other way that you need as well.
That'd be great, because I think that Brian has been a really excellent presentation, and I certainly want to share it with our community, and maybe we can increase some awareness there. Very good. Any questions for Brian?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Excuse me. I had a question about the changing predominance of vehicle types. Is there any effort to develop ways to reduce the serious injuries and fatalities associated with the fact that more of the vehicles on the road are large pickups or SUVs that tend to strike pedestrians or cyclists at a higher level, and therefore it's more likely to drag them under the vehicle than to flip them out of the way, making even a low speed collision less survivable. Is there any work that you're doing on how that could be addressed?
Yeah, and there is work going on in that regard at the national level. So that's kind of a NHTSA thing. So they're more involved in the motor vehicle side of it as we are. We're more focused on infrastructure. But yes, I do know that specifically has come up. And I know that's also come up from an equity kind of perspective as well, because those people that are driving those large SUVs, interacting with the people that are walking and biking, they're two different equity classes oftentimes as well. And so in our specific office, we don't get involved with the vehicle side of it very much. We're mainly focused on infrastructure. But yes, I do know that some of that work is going on at NHTSA and kind of the national level, where some of those trends are being looked into.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Bessie. Members, any additional questions? Brian, thanks again. It was Mr. Clark. I'm sorry. Did you have a question?
Good presentation.
Okay. Thank you, Thank you, Brian. Always a pleasure for you to visit with us.
Thank you very much.
All right, we're to the part of our presentation where we have our staff reports. As you know, members, unless there's a specific request for any of those staff reports to be presented, we just kind of skip through those and get to the end of our meeting. Is there any particular request that anybody wants to hear?
Mr. Chairman, is Mr. Ivy still with us today?
Yes, sir.
If I may, I just have one short question. Are there any of the transit or bike ped projects locally that are still affected by the pandemic freeze and disbursement of state funding for approved projects?
Mr. Bessie, I believe that that all of those were released to move forward, but I will get with my local programs individual and confirm that and let you know directly.
Thank you very much, sir.
Absolutely.
Pat, you flashed up a slide. Do you have any comments you'd like to make about it?
I think the update there is self-explanatory, and if anybody has any questions, I'll be glad to answer those.
Any questions for Mr. Ivy? Pat, we wish you a happy national holiday celebration on Friday.
Thank you, sir.
Very good. Matthew, will you please do a plug for our ethics training?
Yes, sir. So we're doing well. We're up over 50% compliance with the ethics requirements at this point. The deadline, as a reminder, is April 17th. It can be completed online, and we're certainly here to help if anybody needs that assistance. So please do contact us if you need help completing that form.
Thank you, Matthew. Appreciate it. Members, any comments before we adjourn for today? If not, Tanique, once again, let us see your face one more time, wherever you are. There you are. One more time, our sincerest appreciation for all you do. I know that the committee is going to miss you, the staff is going to miss you. I'm going to particularly miss you because you keep me out of trouble a lot of the time, and I truly appreciate that. Best wishes on your endeavor, and I look forward to seeing you on the 31st when we can really celebrate your next adventures.
Thank you. Thank you. It's been an honor and a privilege to work with all of you, and with your outstanding leadership, we've been able to accomplish a lot. And so I appreciate all that you have done, and appreciate your trusting me with the opportunities that you've given me. So thank you. Thank
you. Jeff, good luck in your new position. We know you have a lot of challenges, but we feel confident we're in great hands. Members, any other comments before we adjourn? If not, thanks for taking some time out of your afternoon this afternoon to be with us. A lot of important stuff we want to go on. And with that, this meeting's adjourned.